My name's Ian. I'm an engineer. I've done some business. I'm a very proud dad, and I have been worried. I've been feeling bad about progress on green energy. You know, like recently, there's talk about wind projects, offshore wind projects getting canceled. And you think, is it hopeless? And then I learned about this molecule and I thought to myself, it's not hopeless at all. So this is nitrogen and hydrogen. It's very energy dense. We can make it with green power. We can ship it, we can store it, we can substitute for diesel in a lot of circumstances. It's great. Um, and so I'm in a better mood. All right. This nitrogen, hydrogen is called ammonia. So we don't think of it as fuel. I heard Peter Zine the other day call it nitrogen power, which I like. So maybe this needs some rebranding. Maybe green fuel ammonia. Maybe we should call it nitrogen power or nitrogen fuel or something. But I don't. I want to talk specifically about a company kind of near where I am that released a study that makes some bold statements and has some interesting tech. Okay. So this company, let's flip screens. Okay, here we go. Fuel Positive. Um, I believe they're from Kitchener Waterloo. They're publicly listed, which means they have to do annual reports and stuff. So there's, if you want to dig in, there's some good information on them. They make ammonia solutions. Um, this is not very old, but it's a couple years old. So somewhere along the line, these guys realized that the economics are actually pretty good to take green energy and make ammonia. Green energy makes hydrogen, makes ammonia. Um, Pretty good, and surprisingly, uh, you can do it on a pretty small scale as well. Which, if you're starting a company, it's really hard to start where your first project is gonna take $1 billion, right? It's a lot easier to sell $100 million projects than one $100 million project, right? Which is kind of where they've ended up. They make this system. It's like $1 million. It shows up in a shipping container. You plug in water and green power, and out comes ammonia, green ammonia. Brilliant, right? So because it's so small, because it's relatively low capital cost, you can sell this to farmers who use ammonia themselves for fertilizer. You could plop it down, um, and other green energy producers, say a wind farm or a solar array, if they for some reason can't feed into the grid, they could feed into here, make fuel, and that fuel has a market value. Like, really, as you think about scaling, thinking about how do you get your first sale, how do you grow and get things turning over, this is really smart. So just some notions for you, okay? Um, 1 ton of green ammonia is going to offset about 4 tons of carbon dioxide. That's significant, right? Um, and thinking about the market size, right? So that machine there does 100 tons a year. Um, the market for ammonia is giant, and that's the traditional market for ammonia. That's not fuel, that's fertilizer. It's 200 million tons. and it's a market, like people will buy it. So as you do your 100 tons, there's a huge market to sell into. It's local, it's everywhere, which again kind of de-risks this for buyers. Right? Um, Now, and I don't actually know why it works this way, but in Ontario, we have carbon credits. In Canada, we have carbon credits. And even though it's the same molecule, if you are producing ammonia for fertilizer, you have 2.5 carbon credits. And if you're producing ammonia for fuel, it's 5 carbon credits. I don't know why, because in theory, same. But I suppose maybe this is just trying to encourage green solutions in um, in fuel, uh, which kind of makes sense when you get to this slide. So about 25% of greenhouse gas in North America comes from the power grid. Uh, so what are non-power grid things? Like when you're using coal to make steel, when you're using um, in traditional ways to make ammonia, use natural gas. Um, so there's lots of other sources of carbon. Yeah. You use it to in a bakery, lots of different places. But transport is just a huge chunk of the remaining 75%. It's huge, right? So in Canada, they say it's 175 megatons. I don't really know how to visualize that. That's a lot. Um, and if we break it down, I mean, Canada's big, right? So we ship things over a long distance. So just over a third of it is freight trucks. That's not that surprising. Um, Light trucks is 30%. That's partly passenger vehicles, partly work. That's a lot. Um, I guess I'm not that surprised we drive that many trucks, but it's a lot. 30%. Passenger cars are 20%. So, I don't know per kilometer what the difference is, but there you go. And then we have things like aviation and rail and other things like that making up the last sort of 10%, 15%. So I mentioned earlier that ammonia, um, nitrogen power can replace diesel in some circumstances, lots of circumstances. This company makes marine engines. They make this model that you can run on diesel and you can run on ammonia. And so this isn't theoretical. This isn't one day it will be commercialized. This is here. This is here. If you've got this engine and if you've got one of these shipping containers, you can make your own fuel from a solar panel. You could drive a tractor. You could drive a transport truck. You could drive a train. And that's really exciting, uplifting, right? So according to Fuel Positive, and they commissioned a study. Huh? So looking at the non-peak power, so the grid power, all of it, if you dedicated all that non-peak power, green power, um, so that's nuclear that isn't going into peak, that's winds, that's hydro. If you took all that power, made ammonia with it, you could fuel all of the aviation, the rail, the bus, the trucking, the marine, all of it. Cool, right? Like, I mean, these are regulated industries. A government could start mandating, we want 5% of the fleet, we want 10. Here's your path to being green, and we've got the technology to do it. we can make the ammonia. So through some regulation, we can do the supply and demand and get there. That is very interesting. In Japan, they're doing something similar where they're making the ammonia and using it to offset coal power plants. So like it's for me, it's really interesting that the solutions here, that the actual amount of infrastructure we need to build is not as daunting as you might fear, and the economics are quite good. So there you go. Good news. There's enough power to fuel all of this stuff. Totally green. Okay, check out Fuel Positive. I'll leave a link. Publicly traded, maybe. This is not an endorsement, but go check out what their annual statements look like. All right, cheers.